In order to understand social psychology, we need to understand what it is about. Now, this is the scientific study of how people's thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and intentions are constructed within a social context by the actual or imagined interaction with others. So, how one person interacts with another person, and how those two sort of bond in that relationship, the chemistry of those two people. It looks at human behavior influenced by other people and the conditions under which social behavior and feelings do occur. So we're not just doing things just totally independently. There are other factors around us that is really, really influencing what we decide to do by just the conditions of the environment. It could be stigmas, it could be just conditions, prompts, persuasions. What other people are saying and doing around you, and whether there's consequences or rewards for those types of things. So, the Stanford prison experiment, what this was a landmark psychological study of the human response to being in prison, to the behavior of how people would act, and measuring patience as well. In particular, to the real world circumstances of prison life. So, this was constructed or conducted in 1971 by Felix Zimbardo at Stanford. So then the aim of this. Now, all things have to have an aim, all things have to have a certain intention. And the intention was pretty clear. Zimbardo aimed to show that situational environments rather than disposable factors or personality cause negative behavior and thought patterns found in prisons by conducting a prison simulation with normal participants playing the roles of guard and prisoner. So, sort of showing the deluxe or not deluxe process, whether it would be easygoing or very, very difficult, the waves not being smooth, whatever would be found. And this basically explains the aim. So, how your environment, how being stuck in a prison cell makes you crazy, especially in a jail with a bunch of other criminals who perform really, really bad and very harmful deeds to the world and to different cities and towns and, villages and all of those things. And just how people transform. This is very, very Pluto, where you start off one way and then you slowly change into something else. And let's not forget that Pluto rules the splitting of the atom, rules getting deep into human psychology. So, with that said, we had the Stanford 1971. Now, the reason why this was so significant is because of this little screenshot, I guess you could call it, taken. So they were using people as guinea pigs to be able to give them the results that they needed. So they took male college students, as it says here, and put them in prison, $15 per day, for 1 to 2 weeks, and see how they would react. If they would get very, very hungry, desperate, tired, angry, feeling that restrictive feeling of just that primal creature fighting to survive really, really coming out when you have somebody in a prison cell where it really, really gets to you, and seeing how that would happen. So now we're going to be looking at the participants. So the participants included the researchers set up by a mock prison in the basement of Stanford's University psychology building, and then selected 24 undergraduate students to play the roles of both prisoners and guards. So, they had this whole system set up. They would go in prison, they would be locked there, and then they would carry out what they needed to carry out for this. So the group of 70 volunteers had no criminal background, lacked psychological issues, and had no medical conditions, so they were in pretty good health. So these are undergrad young people, were very, very good health, and to see how it would deteriorate, decline, and I'm going to use the word transform once again, of what effect that it would have on their psychology, on their health, on their state of heart and mind, and maybe view of life, I guess you could call it. So the volunteers agreed to participate for a 1 to 2 week period in exchange for $15 a day. Because obviously, if this is happening, then I think that money would need to be involved in order for it to really, really be worth something if it's like this. That way, you get a reward for you, going through this experiment. And it's not, you being a slave to the experiment, but there's something that comes after it. Like, you do this, and there's going to be gold at the end of the rainbow kind of thing. So then the descriptive groups. So the group selected to be the guards were outfitted in military-style intimidating uniforms. So uniforms that would just really, really shock you and make you sort of stand back and, stand your guard, and your ground. So, they were equipped with wooden batons and mirrored shades. Um, and the reason for this was, they wanted to remove the elements of humanity within this. So they didn't want the guards to just appear as like friendly, kind, another human being that you can connect with, not at all the sort of, you being a slave in a cell and then guards walking around having power over you just like dogs at the, pound or hound, that kind of thing. And the other thing too was, especially because they were in cells, they had bars, as a barrier, they could not physically attack. The guards and the prisoners could not have negative physical contact, basically. So, this is just this sort of map of what it was like. So you can see the different stages of this. To see how sort of extreme that it can get. And so then we have this. So we have the deferral to responsibility to authority. It says when you think that the authority figure will take responsibility for your bad behavior, you take responsibility for that. Then there is diffusion of responsibility. So spreading the responsibility out between many people. You feel less responsible for doing something bad if other people are also involved. So if you are in a crowd of people who, smoke crack, and you're not the only one to blame for that. Now, the next thing is identity change. And with this specifically, when you're wearing a uniform that makes you into a different person than you are on a normal day, if many people wear the same uniform, it makes you feel more anonymous. So, your clothes were taken, your hairstyle, your hat, your shirt, your, beads and bracelets, like anything that made you uniquely who you are, that what you wear was just you and what you felt comfortable with was taken from you. And you sort of went to maybe the olden days or maybe the, um, just the prison days of actually being a prisoner and how that was like. And then the power of your situation. So we all have good and bad character traits that reveal themselves depending upon the situation. And with that, I want to bring to mind Lilith and what it represents. So there's some controversy about it, but before Adam and Eve came about, before Eve came about, Lilith was there, Black Moon Lilith. And she said no, and she would not submit to Adam, so she was cast out of society, and then Eve became the symbol for the more respectable, feminine, kinder model for what they wanted with femininity. And so that's the myth. But what does it represent? Your dark side, the side that people reject, or your fears that are suppressed. And sometimes we end up in situations to where certain people can bring out the worst in us, and certain people can bring out the best. And so how the personalities and chemistries jive or clash, the combination of all those things determines just how we're acting, how we behave, how we respond, our character based off of those situations. So sometimes we may feel very, very rebellious if somebody is very, very strict. Like, I am giving you my rules. Follow A, follow B, follow D, and continue on down that list. You're going to do what I am telling you to do, very authoritarian. Or somebody is very encouraging, very inspiring, letting you be the person that you are, or whatever other trait along those lines. And you just bring out different qualities, and better qualities for that matter. So I'm going to skip to the next slide here, because that other slide had a lot of information on it. So we had the experiment conclusions. So 1 out of the 3 guards became violent and cruel towards the prisoners, showing us how an authority position can alter a person's behavior. And so, yeah, it's a fight for survival. Where there's a violent attack and you fight back and you are overpowered and overwhelmed in a prison cell where it's probably very, very cold or bleak and there's no windows. And it could be the daytime, it could be the middle of the night. And you get attacked by someone and it comes as a shock. And, the instincts, primal instincts kick in and you change into more of the animal human, the mammal human, I guess you could say. So our behavior is drastically affected by the situation to prevent evil behavior. Don't focus on changing individuals. Don't try to push them to the edge and brink of trying to take away the cigarettes at one party in Ireland one night, for instance. You can't control anybody else, but you can convince and inspire other people. So there's ways to do that without pushing your way forward, because then they're going to want to do their own thing, resist, rebel, go their own way. Focus on changing the situations that enable them to behave badly, changing the environment, making it more of a people-friendly environment, a more higher vibration, higher frequency environment. More nurturing, more nourishing, more kind, more, it's like taking an exhale, like you can breathe, like it's a breath of fresh air where you're not feeling high strung, inhibited, on your toes, nervous about if you say or do something, what the result's going to be, where you sort of feel taken over and boxed in. And, eventually people do lose their top. And I like to think of it as patience as being helium in the balloon. And you can patch that balloon up quite a bit, but you need to be careful because once the helium runs out of the balloon, the thing drops and crashes to the ground, and people lose it and can't handle it because of bottling in the emotions and not expressing them in a very kind, constructive, easy way, and then burying them, and then it's out like Mount Vesuvius later on. So, the environment's really, really key. So there was a study in Iraq, and so it put attention after reports of the Abu Ghraib prisoner abuse in Iraq, better known, became known. And so this is just an example of that. And we have some more slides to get through here, so bear with me. So in 1963, Stanley Milgram created an experiment to see if participants would follow orders even when they requested behavior went against the moral beliefs or good judgment. Because they wanted to push them to the edge. They wanted to see how far that they could go. A researcher asked the participant to administer electric shocks to a test subject. When he answers questions incorrectly, the test subject is an actor who makes noises of pain when he receives the shocks. The participant is made to believe that each shock is stronger than the last one. So it trains you. It's like, you better get this right, otherwise you're going to get shocked. So, that kind of a thing. And then the results from this was that all of Milgram's original participants continued the experiment to 300 volts of electricity. 65 of them administered the maximum voltage of 450, which was clearly labeled as life-threatening. Milgram concluded that ordinary people are likely to follow orders given by an authority figure, even to the extent of killing an innocent human being. So, those were the results. So then, it says here that people obeyed orders even when they thought they were harming another person. So even if it was immoral, they still carried the deed out. They still did whatever they were told to do. Strong social influences can make ordinary people conform to falsehoods or exhibit cruel behavior. And there's so many examples of this, and I'm not going to get into the myriad of examples. In any society, great evil acts often grow out of people's compliance with lesser evils. Indeed. So, first they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out, because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I didn't speak out, because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out, because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. And so, we have the findings from these experiments. Obedience was the highest when the person giving orders was nearby and was perceived as the legitimate authority figure, the force to be reckoned with. The research was supported by a prestigious institution. The victim was depersonalized or at a distance. There were no role models for defiance. So, this is up for debate. Is it wrong? Is it right? All those things. Thank you for tuning in. Like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell.